All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
When the sun lowers toward the horizon and the sky turns black.
I don't know what hovers over this house, but it was strong enough to punch a hole into this world.
When the normal makes way for the strange and unexplained.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
It's time to question what is natural and what lies beyond our understanding.
You never told me they could do that. I didn't know they could do that.
It's time to enter the edge of the unknown with your host, Mark Henry.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
And good evening and welcome to the Edge of the Unknown. My name is Mark. I'll be your host for the next 2 hours as we delve into the strange, the unexplained, and perhaps the explainable as well. But you've got the best in paranormal talk anywhere, right here on the Edge of the Unknown. And thanks for hanging out with me. We have a great show coming up. But now man, that's a great way to start the show. That's 3 greats in 2 sentences. Hey, we're going to have a great time. This is great. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. A good way to start there, Mark. You can tell I'm excited, and it's not because of this weather. But I'll get to that in a second. And, of course, I will get to my wonderful guest, tell you about how you can find out more information about her. But first, on a more somber note, as most of you who are paranormal aficionados out there know, yesterday, we lost one of the greatest voices in paranormal talk, and just what sounds like one of the nicest human beings that has ever really kind of hung out here on this round world that we share. Art Bell passed away, age, I saw 2 different reports, 71 and 72, but either way, early 70s, way too young. And, man, I will never forget the first time that I heard Art Bell in the mid-90s. I was working at a competing radio station, and one of the guys that I looked up to also passed away, but one of the greatest talk show hosts in the entire country. He was known from coast to coast, but his name was John Otto. John was on until, oh my goodness, when did John, he started at 11, and I believe he went to 2. And then the Joey Reynolds show was on, which was a nationally syndicated show, but Joey Reynolds also got his start here in Buffalo. But anyway, I was working at GR, Art Bell was on BEN, and for some reason I was bored with what was happening in the middle of the night on my station. I flipped over and was like, my God, how come I have never heard of this guy? And all of the guests that he had, Whitley Strieber was on all the time back then, Linda Moulton Howe was obviously on all the time. It's not that I kick Coast to Coast anymore. I just don't listen to it as much as I did throughout that time from the mid-90s all the way up until Art's retirement, then when he kind of came back. But at any rate, what a sad day. Art was just probably the greatest voice in paranormal talk, paranormal radio. The guy who would allow everybody to talk, to share their thoughts, never put anybody down, never put the boots to anybody, always allowed everyone to have their say. And I like to think, for the most part, I do the same thing here on Sunday nights. Not as smooth and as eloquently as Art Bell. I would never pretend to be Art Bell or anywhere near that caliber. But I tell you what, we have a lot in common the way we run our shows. We run our own board. We get our own spots. We find our own guests, and, we're our own chief cook and bottle washer, and there is a lot of satisfaction in that. And I know that Art has gone to his reward, at least pleased with what he did and how many lives he touched with his show, Coast to Coast AM. Very, very sad to hear his passing. Total bummer. And like I said, it's just nice to remember him. I know a lot of people were sending me emails and messages on Facebook and Instagram yesterday saying, hey, did you see? And I'm like, yeah, it's a bummer. So rest in peace, Art. You will be missed, even though you weren't on the air as much in the later years. But, every time I did hear Coast to Coast, I would say, these guys are good, but I wish Art was still there. So rest in peace, Art. Got a great guest coming up tonight, folks. Just want to remind everybody what's coming up in the next couple of weeks, though. Dr. John Shook is going to be on next week as we continue to talk about philosophy and an atheist look at the paranormal. That'll be a lot of fun. Dr. Rosalind Smith will be talking divine synchronicity. And also in May, Kathleen O'Keefe and Dr. Larry Burke will be on talking dreams, their meanings, and how they might save your life. So that's going to be a great show. And also reaching out to some other folks in the Sasquatch realm, as well as some local ghost hunters, some guys that I have not had on that we're also trying to work on a show with that group over the summer from a very famous location here in New York State. But I'm going to keep the lid on that one until we get closer to that. Hey, I'd love to hear from you tonight during our show. The phone lines are always open for you. 716-218-3557. You can email theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. Shoot me a message on Facebook. And, of course, live chat is always up and running at theedgeoftheunknown.com. Just click that little button at the top of the screen that says live chat, and you can join us there. Shoot me a question. I will get to it as soon as I can because, as I just mentioned, I'm doing a lot of things here. And most importantly is speaking with my guest. Speaking about my guest, she is an author, a teacher, a musician, a pagan advocate, and for over 20 years has been a player in the pagan community and leader in rituals, speaking engagements, and a practitioner of Reiki, tarot cards, and tea leaf readings. Hey, we just talked about tarot cards. We're probably going to expound on that tonight. She is a professional blogger, a winner of the NaNoWriMo contest. Was it really a contest? We'll find out more about that because I tried it once and I failed miserably. She is the author of The Witch's 8 Paths of Power, a book sitting right in front of me right now. And also, you can check out her webpage, SableAradia.com. Making her triumphant return to the Edge. It's been a few years, but she is back, and I am happy to introduce her once again to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Edge, Lady Sable Aradia. Thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Wow, thanks, Mark. That's quite the introduction. But it's really nice to be back. We had such a good time last time. I've been looking forward to this.
Awesome. This is great, and a great way to start. Again, a little somber about Art Bell passing.
Quite a shame. That's really too bad. That's the first I'd heard of it. I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's a total bummer. You know, my father passed away in 2016 in September, and both roughly the same age, both Vietnam vets. And anytime I see a Vietnam vet that was the same age as my dad, I'm like, damn, it's just too early. 72 is not old. It's such a bummer.
You know, we're living longer and longer. 72 is really early these days. And, you know, it's a shame. There seems to be, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's something going on there where a bunch of people who, you know, are around that particular age group are dying young in a time when we can reasonably expect to live into our 80s. So I don't know what's going on there. I'm a little concerned we may be breathing some toxic chemicals we're not aware of or something.
Man, unfortunately, I do know what they were breathing over in Vietnam, and that did come home with them, which is not a laughing matter.
Well, there is that. Yep.
That's
God. A fact.
Which, of course, we had a factory right here in Western New York that was making that, but I'm not going to beat them up tonight. I've got other things to beat up, including this awful weather. And I know I was laughing off air with Sable and saying, I always bitch about the weather. I'm going to do it real quick. And you had a great counter to it, so give me that, and then we're going to jump right into weather magic. But she mentioned to me up in Vancouver, they are having spring. We are not having spring here in Western New York, the great ice storm of yesterday, and now it's just miserable out, and they're saying more snow is coming. We cannot get a break here, where this show is broadcasting from, with weather, and gosh, we really, really need it. We need to just get around that corner so we can start enjoying what a spring is supposed to be. But, so when you hear me complain, Sable, what do you say about weather magic? When you said that, I was like, okay, we're talking about that to start the show.
Sure. Well, we were talking about how, you know, you can't change the weather, right? Well, sure you can. Actually, you really can. There is such a thing as weather magic. The problem with it is that it takes, because it's a chaotic system, it only takes the slightest little thing to make big changes, and they're not isolated, right? Like they have effects on other weather systems immediately around it and elsewhere. You remember, of course, everyone remembers when the hurricanes were beating the hell out of Texas. What was going on here was a major drought, right? And it's directly connected. They feed into each other. If you change one, you change the other. So if you're going to do weather magic, you could really be screwing things up for somebody else. So you have to be really careful about it, I think. This is and I don't know, a lot of other witches agree with me. So we have done weather magic in the past. We did do weather magic when when the hurricanes and the drought was going on. We figured, okay, this clearly is a situation where weather magic is called for, and a bunch of us got together, and it broke things just enough that the hurricanes started dying down, and it actually sort of rained here for a little while. Right? Or it seemed to anyway. I believe that that's what happened because we did the magic and then the next day things changed, right? So, but be careful with weather magic, right? Like, and it's an easy thing to do. I think that a lot of people who started in magic, I was no exception, right? When I was a kid, I used to go, oh, you know what? I don't want it to rain, so I'm going to make the rain go away. And it certainly seemed to work. And then, of course, we'd get this massive thunderstorm later as all the energy came flooding back in.
I got to ask.
Yeah,
I'm going to jump in and ask, how powerful does one have to be, or how long do you have to practice to change the weather? I have a feeling I'd go out there and it would just be, yeah, okay, whatever. The wind would just blow me over.
You know, I honestly think it's intense emotion combined with intense belief. Like, you know, like anything with magic, right? You have to believe it's going to work. If you don't believe it's going to work, it's not going to work because you're undermining yourself underneath everything. You've got this little voice going, no, and of course it's making it less effective, right? But you also have to care, right? It's got to have some energy behind it. So, of course, you care more about it when you're a kid, right? When you're an adult, the only, you care if people are getting hurt and you care if the crops are all going to die, right? But you don't really care if it's going to rain on you today because you've become accustomed to that by now. So not very, depending, right? Kids can do it all the time. Adults, much more difficult.
Without being too insulting to either side and using a term like, well, the rain dance, how much of this sort of thing that you're talking about draws or is similar to what Native Americans believe and also practiced?
Well, I think there's a definite correlation. I mean, a lot of the customs towards creating or encouraging rain, right, encouraging the rain spirits, for example, I think that's pretty consistent in many indigenous cultures, and everybody's got their own way of going about it, but there's a lot of common threads. And what witches do, does it differ much? No, of course not. We borrow what other people have done, right? But faith healers have done that, people who are dedicated Christians who have prayed to God for rain and it's come, I don't think your spirituality is relevant, just the connection to spirit is.
How long did it take you to realize, well, you were saying, when I was a kid and I wanted to change this, how long did it take for you to realize, maybe I am having an effect on not just the weather, but other things around me?
Oh, kids always think they have that kind of effect. And then we learn when we're older that, we're taught anyway. No, you don't, right? But, I guess I always kind of believed it. And because I believed it, I seem to see an effect. I'm willing to allow that, confirmation bias is a thing, right? And maybe my memory of being a child and having this effect is somewhat skewed by my predisposition towards wanting those results. But yeah, I think that if you did a study and said, okay, we're going to test, is Sable changing the weather today? Okay, did the weather change? I think that you'd find a greater than average percentage of examples of when it did.
What kinds of things go into weather magic? What are the kinds of things? And we don't have to get into a blow by blow, but if you could just give us kind of an overview of what you would do to, say, end a drought that you were dealing with just a couple of years ago.
Okay, well, in my particular case, the way I chose to deal with it was to try to call together elemental water and elemental water powers, right? So I was, basically saying, hey, come over here, I know you guys are busy in Texas, but they really don't need that much help. Come here, and I think that to a large extent, just about anybody's system is different, right? They might be talking to the wind spirits, asking the wind to blow clouds over, stuff like that. But I think it's more of an asking than a forcing, right? And it's not much more complicated than that, really. I use symbols that represent elemental water for me that I learned in the course of my study, but that's more for a focus than it is for, this particular, mathematical formula will create this ultimate result. So, no, and other witches did it at the same time.
I was just going to ask,
right?
Is it more effective with a group?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are two ways to do really effective magic. One is to hone your personal will so that it's really sharp and really, and you believe it wholeheartedly and it does exactly what you want it to do. And then the other way is to get other people to do it with you. And then their belief bolsters yours and all of your energies together creates the desired effect.
I'm going to take a step back. We're speaking with Lady Sable Aradia this evening on The Edge of the Unknown. SableAradia.com for her website. What's the state of Wicca right now in the world from your standpoint? I read an article just last week, and I can't remember the source. I can go and dig it up during a break, that was talking about how most Americans, and I'm using America because that's where we're broadcasting from, I think there's like a 30% decrease in folks who are claiming whatever religion might be theirs, whether it would be the Jewish faith or Christian faith. That is on the decline in the States. Can we say the same for Wicca, or what's your opinion or what's your feeling of what the state of Wicca is in the world?
That's a good question, and out here in Western Canada, I tend to be pretty isolated in the community that I deal with, but I do interact in the blogosphere. I know that probably it is, right? I think that lots of people are losing faith right now, and I can certainly see why. I had my own little crisis of faith over the past couple of years, so I can definitely understand that people are saying, well, geez, maybe the divine really doesn't give a damn because look what's going on,
sure,
right? But in general, I don't know. I guess it depends on your brand of Wicca and paganism. I know that there's been a real growth over the past couple of years in what people are calling traditional witchcraft, which is related to Wicca but isn't exactly the same. And I don't know if you really want me to go into that, Mark, because the details are basically semantics about theology more than practice, okay. I would say.
So, I mean, is it really drastic differences, or is it just somebody over here decided we're going to do things a little differently?
That's how I see it. I know that there are those who would disagree with me. I think that I don't know. Like it's really a matter of focus. I think what you're more interested in, what you're focused on. I think that it's like the difference between being, I don't know, say Anglican and Catholic, right? I mean, they're both Christianity. They're slightly different denominations with, different histories and a different focus on which issues they consider to be more important and the way in which they structure themselves. But ultimately, if you were to ask them both, okay, do you believe in, these things, right, like the Nicene Creed, for example, they would say yes. So, yeah, that's how I see it.
So it's kind of like Episcopalians are like Catholic light, right? I mean, they're doing
Sure.
the same thing, but not necessarily as heavyweight. Interesting. When it comes to at least the folks that you know in the witchcraft community or the Wicca community, what do the personalities tend to be like? I would assume it's like anything else where there are some people who are a little more intense than others, but what's the overall vibe of being part of a coven or just being a part of Wicca in general?
Okay, that's okay. I'm going to get myself in trouble here. No,
Don't do that.
well, it's. I would say most of us are pretty much like anybody else, right? And in any given group, you're going to have personalities that don't necessarily get along. Some people are more intense than others. Others are much more subdued and would rather not, get involved in a bunch of squabbling over religious matters or whatever, right? And I think that it tends to be really intensified, though, in the pagan community because it is small. So when one person speaks, their voice is much louder than it might be in, say, the overall, Buddhist community, right? So when there is turmoil, it tends to overflow a lot more than prospectively I think it should. And other than that, I think we tend to attract people who are kind of outsiders, and that complicates things too. The reason why is because, of course, if you were content with the beliefs that you had learned in the world around you and grown up with, you would be an atheist or a Christian or something along that line, right? You would not seek out a small faith like Wicca and paganism. So we tend to get a lot of that, and we also tend to get a lot of free thinkers. I think this is a wonderful thing. I think that we really do tend to be more extreme in our positions in some cases because we attract that type, and this creates a really dynamic environment full of exchange of ideas. But it also does mean that when there's a personality conflict, it's a big one, and when there are disagreements of theology or philosophy, they tend to get heated. So, yeah.
Well, that makes perfect sense. You're listening to The Edge of the Unknown. My guest this evening is Lady Sable Aradia. We're talking all things Wicca and witchcraft. Are there the same kind of hierarchies in Wicca for those who aren't familiar with the entire idea of paganism and the things that you do? Or, a different sect over here on the West Coast as opposed to someone who's down in the Southeast and so forth? Are there different levels, or does everybody just kind of intermingle and flow between ideas that you were just mentioning, or is there really more of a set standard that people are following?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's not in any way structured like a church, although there are Wiccan churches that are sort of structured like a church. The Wiccan Church of Canada is a very old group that's been around now for some 30 years, and they get together weekly to do ritual. So, it's a church, cool, right? But there are traditions, and I'm part of something called the Star Sapphire tradition, which started in Vancouver. I'm in the interior of BC, about 4 hours north. So it's kind of spread out from there, and there's a couple of people in Ontario who, members of the tradition who moved out there. So, and in a tradition of Wicca, you have it's like a Reiki lineage for those who are familiar with Reiki, or say a martial arts tradition. You have people who taught you, and they do initiations to indicate that you've reached a different level, right? You have the first, second, and third degrees. First degree is you're an active practitioner. Second degree is you're a teacher. And third degree is you're ready to go and start your own covens and your own traditions and so on, right? So within a Wiccan tradition, there is sort of that hierarchy, and that receives a lot of criticism from pagans who don't want to follow a hierarchy, right? And that's fair, right? I don't think it's nearly as hierarchical as it appears on the outset. I think that a lot of the flack is undeserved, because once you have achieved these initiations, then you don't answer to anybody, really, right? So it's respectful to go back to your old mentor and ask their advice and stuff like that, right? But you're not beholden to them, right? So there's that. Most other pagan traditions don't really have that kind of structure. The Asatru and other northern-style pagans who tend to follow the Norse pantheon, the Viking pantheon, for those who are not familiar, they tend to have structures which they call kindreds or freeholds. Usually there's a person who is in charge of organizing things in that community, and I usually it's because they own the place where people meet. So I guess I don't really know. Some kindreds are more formal than others, but that's about the extent of that particular hierarchy there. There are schools of druidry, for example, where you go through considerably more initiations, and there are, of course, ritual magic groups, which I'm sure you've probably had people who know more about that than me on the program before.
Well, I think you're a heck of a resource, too, which is why you're back. So not everybody comes on the show more than once. Look at it that way.
Well, I'm really honored. It's very cool.
I am honored that you're taking the time out to speak with me. Lady Sable Aradia, my guest here on The Edge of the Unknown. You kind of mentioned this or touched on this just a second ago. I want to revisit it. When we talk about Wicca, paganism, the whole nine, it seems that it's a little bit more accepted, even in my short lifetime, where in the late 70s, early 80s, this sort of thing was still, at least in the unbelievably white bread town that I grew up in, it was totally looked down upon, like, oh my goodness, it was, why would you ever do that? And witchcraft is bad, and this, that, and the other thing. Today, I don't really see that as much. Maybe it's because I continue to talk to different people in different communities, but overall, what are your feelings on the way things have changed from those who don't participate in the things that you do, and it seemed to be a little more accepting, or perhaps they don't?
Okay, that sounds like two different questions to me. Let me ask you for clarity then.
Sure.
Okay, are you asking me, is Wicca and paganism more generally accepted in the population, or are you asking me, are Wiccans and pagans more accepting of difference?
Let's do both, but let's start with, is paganism more accepted by the mainstream?
I would say hands down, yes. The first time I started doing anything in the public was in the early 90s. And wow, right? Like, it was an uphill battle. I had to fight with the local rec center to let me rent the hall. You know, people showed up to my rituals to preach the gospel at me. You know, it was something, right? And you know, I've been on the receiving end of some real nastiness, and it has cost me in my personal life before to have this opinion and be public about it in my theology and my faith, right? But over time, nowadays, it seems, for the most part, when people start talking faith and they say, oh, well, you know, what's your faith? And I go, oh, well, I'm a Wiccan, right? About 30% of the time you'll get, oh, okay, which is awesome. And then about 30% of the time you'll get, oh, well, tell me more about that. And about 30% of the time you'll get, oh, and then they'll turn green and find something else to do somewhere else with somebody else. So definite improvement. Yeah.
Lady Sable Aradia, my guest here on The Edge. Now, let's grab the second part of that before we take a break. Internally, is it the same thing that everyone is accepting of everybody else in paganism, or are those little spats and battles going on? We kind of talked about that, but is it a little more prevalent now than it used to be, or is it reverse?
That's interesting. Okay, I think that still, in general, I think we tend to be more accepting of difference as a community. And the reason why is because most of us have been outsiders who have been on the receiving end of a lot of negativity because of our outsider status, right? Excuse me. Right? So, but yes, over time, I have found that because there are more of us and therefore there's more variation in the things that we think and believe, sometimes those things are diametrically opposed, even within the pagan community, and the spats can get nasty. They really can. They're not. I don't want to give anybody the impression that it's, it's a horrible political place where people are backbiting, but that does go on occasionally.
Sure.
Yeah. Right. I used to not think at one time when I was first studying it that you would ever find a right-wing pagan. And I am wrong. There are lots of them, and they're very strongly right-wing and very conservative in their beliefs. And because I tend to not be, in some cases, I am never going to agree with some of these people on their positions. I'm just not going to, right? Sure. And that creates stress because we're trying to be inclusive, but we also have to know where our own boundaries are. And boundary drawing is something that I think as a community we could learn a lot more about.
I wonder if that would have been the same way when I was growing up. I got kicked out of my church and youth group, so just
oh dear.
But it was an honest
Why?
thing.
You asked too many questions.
I asked
right?
way too many questions and had a couple of opinions that were a little bit different, and that didn't sit well with them, and I was asked to leave. And the funny thing is about 2 years later, when I was actually just starting college, they asked me to come back, and I was like, no, you guys kicked me out. I'm not coming back to that club.
I know, right? You kicked me out, and you think I want to come back?
Yeah, no.
What, do you think I forgot?
Too funny. Wow. Yeah. So anyway, I won't go down that line, and I don't hold any grudges. Still love those people. Good group. And but yeah, that happened. Anyway, we're up against...
I actually have a similar story that way, right? My parents were agnostic, right? But they encouraged me to go and check out other faiths. They said, we don't believe this, but if you are interested, because I was like, my friends are all going to church, what's going on here?
Sure.
Right? They said, well, go pursue that and, see if it resonates with you. And I did a lot of that. I went to my best friend's Mormon church for a while, and I went to a Baptist church. I liked the Lutheran church the best. And, just because the minister was very good at speaking to kids, I think was why I liked that one the best, and their Sunday school rocked, right? But sooner or later, I would ask a question, and somebody really felt uncomfortable with me asking that question. So then I would move on to the next church group. And this went on into high school, and then I was like, what, there's other options?
That's too funny. You know what? As soon as you said Sunday school, this is my last wise-ass thing before we really do have to take a break. Every year you had to memorize, this is like elementary school, you had to memorize Bible verses for whatever. I don't remember, you got candy or something silly like that. But everybody always fought over, and I'll never forget it, John chapter 11, verse 35. Everybody knows that one.
Yeah.
Jesus
that's
wept.
Right.
Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, I'm out of here. That's the kind of church guy I was. Oh, what a jerk. Anyway, we'll stop being a jerk here and let Sable Aradia be the wonderful guest that she is when we get back after this fast break. Hey, guys, we'd love to hear from you if you have a question about Wicca, witchcraft. Hey, the phone lines are open, 716-218-3283. 3557. And, of course, you can always email theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. Feel free to interact with us as we take you up until 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. Wherever you may be listening around the round world, that time may vary, but hey, for the next hour and a half, you've got us here. Everybody stick around. Much more coming up here on the Edge of the Unknown right after this.
It's a fact. The best sounding music comes from analog audio found on vinyl records. But high-quality vinyl has been hard to find until now. Records Etc. in Williamsville, New York is your destination for new and used vinyl records in a variety of categories from blues to Zydeco. Located in the Eastern Hills Mall, Records Etc. is easy to find and fun to shop. Classical, rock, comedy, and new wave are waiting for you at Records Etc. So dust off your turntable or pick one up at the store and start listening to music the way artists intended it to be heard. They also carry rock and roll memorabilia, t-shirts, posters, and more. That's Records Etc. in the Eastern Hills Mall in Williamsville. Call 716-481-7177 and ask for Ray for more information. Records Etc. Tunes for our times.
Listen and imagine. It takes 5 seconds to send a text, and for those 5 seconds, you're driving blind. Life is worth more than a text. Stay alive. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hello. What are your fears? Are you badgered by domestic affairs, haunted by ghosts or demons, terrorized by those who would use magic as a weapon, or tormented from within? I can end it. I can stop it. I can cast them away, for I am a sorcerer, and protecting people from these things is what I do. Seek my services at sorcererforhire.com or call now for faster service 206-501-0444, because time is not on your side.
Whoa. The moment my son saw a redwood tree.
It's huge!
Is the moment I knew that for him,
You can't even see the top of that thing!
even the sky has no limit.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. Your moment is out there. Find it at discovertheforest.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Looking for the best Japanese and Thai cuisine in Western New York? Then you have to visit Teton Kitchen at 415 Dick Road in Depew. From appetizers and soups, simple, special, big, and fusion-style maki, to sushi, sashimi, and tempura, you won't get a range of items like this anywhere. Hungry for more? Teton Kitchen offers a full dinner menu and kushiyaki dishes, as well as a huge variety of sake, wine, beer, both domestic and Asian imports. Owner Taka and his bride Kin are proud to boast that Teton Kitchen is Yelp's #1 rated restaurant in Western New York, and they welcome you for lunch or dinner 7 days a week with takeout and online ordering available. Visit TetonKitchen.com for their full menu, hours, and online ordering, or call 716-393-3720. Teton Kitchen, 415 Dick Road in Depew.
Itadakimasu. Hey guys, it's Kitsy from Oddity Files. You're listening to The Edge of the Unknown.
And welcome back to The Edge of the Unknown. Thank you, Kitsy Duncan from the Oddity Files. Hey, if you guys have never checked that show out on YouTube, go and do it. Kitsy was on in the fall, and they put a ton of work into their show on YouTube. And what a great outlet for things to be on. YouTube is amazing. And as many of you know, I have a separate YouTube channel that I update weekly and have a lot of fun with, Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. Check that out if you have not. Lots of cool stuff going on there. But also check out Oddity Files. It's really, really interesting, and I know a lot of people who have heard me say that will say, well, how come you don't like the Ghost Hunter guys? It's the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's very, very different, and a cool group. Go and check them out, and we'll have to have them back on. But she was a lot of fun, and we're having a lot of fun tonight with my guest, Lady Sable Aradia, SableAradia.com. See, the night is already flying by. Isn't that amazing how fast things go?
It is quick, isn't it? It's already, I can't believe it's already 20 to 6 here. That's amazing. In my time, anyway.
I know. It's crazy with this because people will say, you need to go back to your 3-hour format. And I keep saying, no. And, I don't know. Last week I did 2.5 hours with a guest. And, hey, thanks to everybody for your comments after that show. I got a lot of very complimentary comments, and I got some scathing emails. But it just shows that people are actually listening, so I appreciate all comments. We had a lot of fun there. We did about a 2.5-hour show. You never know. We might get back there. It just is, these old bones. It starts to get rough as soon as you know that you've got to get up for work tomorrow. And anyway, let's get back into the conversation that we're having.
People run out of spit after about 2 hours, I think, too.
And the funny thing is you could be having the greatest conversation and just be like, oh, no, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. And then there's other times that you're just like, yeah, you know what? Let's just do this in another show. Let's try that. We were just drained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Before we leave the whole idea of the perception of paganism, the perception of Wicca, when people do kind of approach you and say, "Oh, you're a Wicca," and they're kind of taking the one step back, do you actually have the opportunity to tell them what it's really about and kind of dissuade them from what's probably going on in their head, that it's not a bunch of people slicing up rabbits at midnight out in the woods and that sort of thing?
You know what, Mark? I'm getting old. Okay. Well, I'm older anyway, right? And I'm starting to get to a point now where I just get tired of it. I'm done, right, explaining to people who want to have attitude problems about it and don't want to read. Because, I mean, look, right, like you said, most of the general populace has a vague idea of what Wicca is about now, right? Most of them have asked some questions, and the ones who don't know and want to know are going to ask you, right? So if people are giving you, the wide berth, it's because they don't want to know. Right, so I'm getting cynical, and I'm honest. I wish I could say I would like to be a better person, where I could say, no, I take the time and I explain it all to them, and we all shake hands and have coffee, and isn't it wonderful? But I would be lying. I'm tired of it, and I really just cannot be bothered now. If someone doesn't want to listen, I don't want to tell them. So I'm sorry.
No, that's a quite honest answer. I think a lot of people probably feel that way, from any standpoint of a religious or spiritual belief. It's like, I don't have to justify myself to anybody, and I don't have to answer questions if you're not willing to hear what it's really about, because, what's the point in talking to somebody who's got a preconceived notion that they're not going to let go of?
Exactly. I'm still willing to go to war for other people, though, right? Like my stepdaughter was having some trouble in her school, and they were telling her she wasn't allowed to wear her pentacle, and that was a mistake. And they were very sorry that they had done that, I think, because they got the likes of me, and I can be I describe myself as a pagan advocate because I champion the cause. So if someone is being denied their religious freedom, this is something I will go to war over. I'll go to war over other religions too. If you tell somebody, I don't know, what's a big issue here in Canada, right? Is it okay for Muslim women to wear the niqab, right? And my opinion is adamantly, if they're wearing it by choice, that's none of your damn business. You know, you leave them alone. They can wear whatever they want. How dare you tell them they can't wear what they want, right? And besides, it's a symbol of their faith, and how dare you tell them what to believe, right? So, and there are people in Canada who are adamantly opposed to that idea. They view it as a symbol of feminine oppression, and they think that it's immoral somehow. And I just don't think it's their place to tell them that, you know? So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm way off topic here.
No, that's perfect. It's funny. I was thinking about the only time I've run into that was when I lived in Northern Virginia, was teaching. And at that time, kids were using rosary beads as a gang symbol. And outside of colors, that was the only thing that we had to watch out for. And if a kid came in, it was obvious. But it was a very fine line that everybody had to walk in public education, especially in that area, because it was you're infringing on their, you know, it was, but it was clearly not. You know, you could ask a kid, okay, give me a novena, you know, give me a run through that rosary
Hail
for
Mary.
me.
Yeah.
Give me a Hail Mary. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do it. So anyway, what an interesting thing. But wow, even a pentacle in this day and age, someone would get trouble for that. Wow, that's amazing to me, at least. I mean, with all the other things that we see people wearing in schools or out in public, that blows my mind that anybody would even care. But hey, what are you going to do?
Yep, kind of blows my mind too.
So, we talked about you being a professional blogger. You're a writer. Did the lecturing come first, or was it the writing that came first? And how do those two things intertwine as far as you interacting with other pagans and Wiccans and the rest of us that are not involved in that area of life?
Okay, that's a very long and convoluted story. I will try to give you the Reader's Digest condensed version. Okay, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. This is something I've been wanting to do since I was 10 years old. I was a Stephen King fan. I was reading everything he wrote in the library. I read Dance Macabre. This was before he'd put out On Writing, which is an excellent, excellent book on writing if anybody wants a recommendation, right? And I was like, okay, this is me. You know, I recognize me. I want to tell stories. I want to talk to people. I want to reach people through words. This is what I want to do. And it's a convoluted road to becoming a writer because the world does not want you to do it, right? I got constant advice from people, oh, well, you know, get a real paying job first. You know, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket with writing. So I delayed a lot actually going about and doing that. And, okay, so different stream here, right? In the late 80s, early 90s, I was learning all about paganism. I was excited about it. I wanted to do pagan stuff with other pagans. Nothing like that was going on in my area, right? The interior BC has a reputation for being a conservative sort of place. It's not anymore anyway, right? But I don't know. That's politics. I won't get into that. But it has that reputation, and at the time it was, right? So I reached out to other people through Yahoo groups, and I'm like, hey, let's get together. I hear you're into paganism. This is a group. Let's start a group. And it kind of blew up from there. And initially we were all kind of teaching each other. It was a group that called itself the Okanagan Pagans. I'm in the Okanagan Valley. And because of that, I think that, it's really amazing how many people from the original Okanagan Pagans group have since gone on to do significant things in the pagan community. It's really interesting. I think we all kind of galvanized each other. So I started doing that. And this, of course, led me into advocacy because I wanted to do a pagan pride event. And that's, the first time I talked about having to argue with the local rec center and whatnot as to where I was allowed to do my stuff. And so, and at this time I had kind of decided, well, I've got a son, I have to pay the bills, I don't really have time to be a writer, it's not a stable career, so I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. And when it all finally came together, fast forward a few years because we're doing the condensed version, I know it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like a Shaggy Dog
Take your
story.
time. The floor is yours.
Okay, but then my husband was in a major car accident, and he almost died. I write about it in my book. I think we talked about it last time too.
Yes, we did.
And I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, all right, I'm not happy doing this, so I'm going to go and do what I want to do. So 3 months before the accident, I had purchased a store. It was kind of an odd thrift store with a metaphysical bend at the time. I got it for a song, and it was amazing how fortuitous that was, because after the accident, for a long time, my husband needed my constant help. So there was no getting a full-time job. That was not going to happen. So I put everything into the business, and for a while it did really well. And all of these things went together. I started writing the book I wanted to read, and through that started writing as a habit, right? This eventually led to the blogging. Since we last talked, I now have my own blog at pathos.com. It's pathos.com/blogs, I think, or blog, Between the Shadows, like / between blogs and Between the Shadows. But they gave me my own blog at Pathos. I was writing for a group blog before that, right? And things just kind of grew from there. Then, okay, so the book came out. I did a book tour. I had a lot of fun. And then my business fell apart. And so this is kind of where I've been for the past few years and why we haven't spoken in a while. I've been kind of hibernating. But in the process of that, I picked up my fiction writing again, which I had decided I was never going to be doing as a 20-year-old. And I'm starting to get somewhere with that, and, just starting to become what they call an emerging writer, where I'm starting to get attention and people are starting to figure out who I am and what I'm doing. And that's under my mundane name, Diane Morrison, not my craft name, Sable Aradia.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I
don't know if that's what you originally asked.
No, sure. No, that's exactly where we're going. And I want to bring up something, but I also want to bring up some of the other Wiccans that I have on. Boy, I can form this question, really, honest. Stick with me. Also have a penchant for writing fiction that they draw so much from their experiences with Wicca for writing fictional books. I find that fascinating. I am sent stuff all the time from publishers, and hey, we've got this person wants to come on your show, they're publishing and they're doing this book and that book. A lot of the stuff I get tends to be fiction, which I keep telling them I really don't talk about fiction all the time. But I just think it's interesting that these folks who are involved with Wicca have such neat experiences that they've turned it into fictionalized events. That why not use that talent? Why not use that gift to tell a story rather than always have to be so serious about your spirituality?
Absolutely. A lot of us got interested in paganism because we read some fantasy novel as a child and went, hey, I wonder if that's possible, And then we started looking for things that looked like that, right? I know many people who read Lord of the Rings or now Harry Potter or, Mercedes Lackey's books, for example, where there was elements of things that look a lot like modern pagan spirituality, and they went, aha, right? I'm no exception. I think that it translates well because what people are looking for, what publishers, I understand, are looking for now in fiction writing, even in fantasy, is things that sound plausible. So if it's going to sound plausible, it has to have an internal, consistent logic that makes sense. If you're used to dealing with magic in this world, then you have a sense of the laws of cause and effect, the laws of connection, the laws of attraction, the laws of, like magic works according to rules, right? So you can take that and you can put it into a book, except that in the book you actually see flashy fireballs and stuff, and it seems to make sense. And, of course, you know how it feels to draw energy and then create a spell effect because you've done it, right? Of course, it's not usually as visually dramatic as it is in fantasy fiction, but, hey, it works.
Do people still talk about 8 Paths of Power? I mean, it's got great reviews. Every place I've seen it online. And folks, you can find it at Barnes & Noble. You can find it at Amazon. And as I say every week, if your local bookstore doesn't have it, tell them to get it. Is that something that's still living on where people are still asking you to talk a little bit about that book?
Yes, actually, which is a big surprise to me. There was, when I first was about to publish the book, and I was excited about it, and I'm like, okay, yes, Weiser's publishing my book. I'm very excited. One of the people that I know who's a friend in the pagan community, who is also an author, and I won't say who, but he said to me that the advance would be all I would ever see, so enjoy it, right? And I believed him. He's a well-known author. People know who he is, and I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But I'm still getting royalties. Now, I won't tell you how much, right? But I am, right? And yes, just last week, somebody emailed me to say, hey, I just got recommended your book. Where can I find it? Can I get it at Chapters? Yes, people are still talking about it, which delights me. It makes me so happy. If people have questions, ask me. That reminds me, right? You said before we started the show, insert things if I had things to say.
Please.
I'm adding on-demand classes to my website based in The Witch's 8 Paths of Power. When I was working on the book in my store before it closed, I was offering classes, and I taped them all. So I'm taking the old footage. Now, granted, it's not HD, it's not a, high, slick, professional production. Mm-hmm. So I'm not charging very much for them. But I took the classes as a base, and I started adding exercises and graphics with my own meager video editing software, and they are now available online. You can get them at my website.
Wow, that's cool. So it's kind of like I don't want to say a rebirth, but kind of a second wind for the same material, but in a completely different digital way. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah, I think of it like that too. Yeah.
So I have to ask, as I brought it up at the top of the hour, NaNoWriMo, for those of you who are not familiar with it, it is, if I can remember, it's National Novel Writing Month. And now, is that October or November?
It's November.
It is November. So can you talk a little bit about what that is and how you actually did it?
I love NaNoWriMo so much. NaNoWriMo is one of the reasons why The Witch's 8 Paths of Power got published. And that's not all I've done, by the way. I've done other things since then. We can get into that later.
Of course we will.
I haven't been sitting on my butt for 3 years. But, National Novel Writing Month is a challenge to write a novel in a month. The goal is to write 50,000 words. How you accomplish that is by writing 1,667 words a day. So, 50,000 sounds like a lot, but 1,667 words is an essay. If you can write an essay a day, you can do this. And the cool thing about it is that it's got an amazing support system that is worldwide. They do all kinds of things. They have a Twitter account that runs. They have a Twitter account that does what they call word sprints, where they have people who are, they'll say, okay, for the next 15 minutes, write, and your prompt, if you want to use it, is forest, right? And then people will write about that topic for 15 minutes, and then you take a break. They have a YouTube channel where people do what they call write-ins, where it's basically word sprints lined up back to back. There's local groups that meet, and there's forums, and it's awesome. And one of the things I did when I decided that I wanted to get back into writing was I heard about this, and I decided to do it. And at the time, I wrote what was then a fan fiction novel about a Dungeons and Dragons setting. I'm exactly that kind of nerd. And I did it. I did the 50,000 words. And what that gave to me was that I had made a habit of writing. Now, they say if you do something every day for 21 days, it becomes a habit. So we've done it every day for 30 days. Now it's a habit. So I just never quit.
That's awesome. I've tried it. And unfortunately, I wrote a ton as a kid. I wrote all through college. I wrote after college. I was writing when I was in radio, not a problem. The minute I got into what I do now, where writing became my job, the last thing I want to do when I get out of work is write. And it's such a shame because I've got all these ideas and notes, and okay, here's my nerd side of things. I will leave notes strategically in different places, and I will come across them when I'm cleaning or doing something else, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that was a great idea. And I still haven't moved forward on it. But I did try NaNoWriMo once. I think I got 3 days in and was like, nope, can't do it. What a bum I am. I guess I don't have the staying power anymore.
Try again.
Maybe I should.
The idea is something on a page is better than nothing. Even if it's crap, even if you're not going to reach the 50,000 words. They do what they call Camp NaNoWriMo, if you want to set a lesser goal. I'm doing one right now. April is one of the months they do that, and July is the other month they do that in. And you set your own goals. It's the same website, except you put camp in front of it. It's NaNoWriMo.org, and the Rye with the W-R-I, because, writing. And then it's campNaNoWriMo.org if you want to do the camp versions. And it's a little more low-key. You don't have quite the same aggressive support system that you do during November, but you get sorted into what they call cabins, which are sort of limited forums that work kind of like a limited Twitter feed that, you and about a dozen other people are in, and you support each other through that. And, if you decide you only want to write 10,000 words in the month or 1,000 words in the month, you can do that, right? And people will support you in that goal. So you should try it again.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I've got so much other stuff that I'm working on. Why not one more, right? I'll fit it in somehow. We'll figure that out.
If you decide you want to do it, you can come join my cabin.
There you go. Maybe
I will
that would
support you.
Maybe it'd be better if I had somebody that I knew there that wouldn't beat me up so bad. Okay, yeah. We can try that. Lady Sable Aradia, my guest here on The Edge of the Unknown. We're up against a break, but we've got another hour to go here. We're going to get into more of what she's been up to in the couple of years since she's been on the show and the other books that she's reading. But guys, go to her website if you're playing at home, SableAradia.com. Much more information about her there. And hey, give us a yell. The phones are quiet tonight, but we would love to hear from you. 716-218-3557, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. I'm going to go check the email bag while we are in this break, but we're going to be back in just a second, so nobody go nowhere. My name's Mark. You're listening to The Edge of the Unknown, taking you up until 10 o'clock here on the East Coast. The best in paranormal talk anywhere. We're back right after this, guys.
Siggy's Good Food in Manhattan sets the standard for home-style comfort food in a warm and casual environment. Located at 292 Elizabeth Street between Houston and Bleecker, Siggy's Good Food offers something for everyone. Vegetarian and meat eaters alike will find dozens of dishes to whet their palates and satisfy their appetites at great prices. Siggy's menu has many gluten-free and lactose-free dishes too, and everything is made with 100% organic, sustainable, and whole food ingredients. See the full menu at siggysgoodfood.com or call 212-226-5775. Make it your business to check out Siggy's Good Food, open Monday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 10:30 p.m., with brunch on the weekends from 11 until 3:30. Takeout and delivery are also available. That's Siggy's Good Food in Manhattan, siggysgoodfood.com, 212-226-5775. And remember, if you're an extraterrestrial, aliens eat free.
If you live in the Western New York or Southern Ontario area and are looking to get a tattoo, then go see the cats at Sixth Order Tattoo in Buffalo, New York. Voted Best Tattoo Shop by Buffalo Spree Magazine, these are the guys to see for any ink project you can dream up. Shop owner Chris Capola and artist Joe Folmar, Andy Biscaglia, Nick Conter, Jake Miracle, and John Rutsky are proficient in many tattoo styles, including traditional American, Japanese, modern Polynesian, as well as illustrated and portrait tattoos. Have a design in mind? Bring it in. Stuck on ideas? They've got plenty to show you. I recently had my 8th piece of art inked by my man Joe Folmar, and I'm telling you, there's no other guy I trust with an ink gun, and that's why you should make an appointment at Sixth Order Tattoo today. Call them, 716-633-7171, or stop in. They're located at 3503 Genesee Street, just east of Union Road. Check out their website, sixthordertattoo.com, and find them on Facebook. Sixth Order Tattoo, the best ink for your body.
We all face multiple stressors each day, from work deadlines and home and family obligations, not to mention body aches and pains that come with both active and inactive lifestyles. A great way to ease those tensions is by floating at the Silver Essence Floating Spa in Williamsville, New York. What is floating? It's a highly effective and therapeutic relaxation experience in which your body is suspended in warm, comforting salt water without stimulation from lights or sounds. Lay back and let tension drift away as you float in nearly zero gravity while your body is replenished with essential minerals like magnesium, potassium, sodium, and calcium, minerals vital to our health that are lost throughout the day. Floating at the Silver Essence Floating Spa is great for anyone, athletes, those rehabilitating from injury, or if you're just looking for a new way to relax. Floating is even known to increase creativity and speed up the healing process. Silver Essence is open Monday through Saturday with convenient morning and evening hours, and they offer infrared sauna treatments, membership deals, special packages, and much more. Check them out online at silveressencefloatingspa.com or call 716-568-7985. Conveniently located in downtown Williamsville. They're just minutes from anywhere. That's the Silver Essence Floating Spa. Get your float on and tell them you heard about them on the Edge of the Unknown.
For those interested in delving deep into the paranormal, why not look into the Paratech Store? Located at paratechstore.com, browsers will find the latest in investigative equipment, books, and more. Items go beyond technical equipment. Mojo bags, stone sets, and other curiosities await your exploration at the Paratech Store. paratechstore.com. Visit them today.
Are you ready for something really scary? Stop over to the campfire at Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories on YouTube. Here's some of the most terrifying stories you've ever heard. Ghosts, monsters in the woods, stalkers, unexplained phenomenon, and more. And the best part? All of the stories are true. Got a story you'd like to share? Send it to Uncle Josh, truescarystories@gmail.com. Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories on YouTube, where fact is more terrifying than fiction.
When the sun lowers toward the horizon and the sky turns black, when lines blur and things are not exactly what they seem, when the normal makes way for the strange and unexplained. It's time to question what is natural and what lies beyond our understanding. It's time to enter the edge of the unknown with your host, Mark Henry.
And into hour number 2 we go here on the Edge of the Unknown. Thanks for hanging out with me late on a Sunday evening, no matter where you may be around the round world. It could be tomorrow, it could be in the morning, could be the afternoon. No matter what the time is, you've got the best in paranormal talk right here on The Edge. My guest, Lady Sable Aradia, SableAradia.com. We're talking all things Wiccan, and we're also talking about the art of writing. And we're going to continue on with that discussion as we move into hour number 2. Real quick, just got a notice, and I want to send a shout out, and hopefully everybody in the Lynchburg, Virginia area is okay. Got a notice that they might have just had a touchdown of a tornado there. I saw a guy who listens to the show, my buddy Ken, said that he is okay, but looks like they're having some pretty severe weather down there. So I don't know if anybody's doing something to affect that weather. Or somebody should get their butt out there and turn that weather around like we talked about in the first hour. But I hope everybody is safe there. Ken, if you're listening, hang in there, man. Everybody is rooting for you. Hopefully everything stays safe. But to get back into our discussion, it's been a couple of years since Lady Sable Aradia has been on this here radio show. And the last time we were talking in depth about her book, The Witch's 8 Paths of Power. But since then, obviously, a lot more writing has gone on as we kind of left off in hour number 1. What else have you been working on? What can you talk to us about outside of the straight standard Wiccan stuff and this really great endeavor that you found in fiction writing?
Well, okay. Yeah, it's there's been quite a lot. I've been in 2 anthologies since we last spoke. One's called the Pagan Leadership Anthology, and the other one is Pagan Consent Culture. The first one deals with just what are we looking for in a pagan leader, because in our community, to a large extent, we're sort of reinventing the wheel. In a lot of places, we don't have established church structures. So what does pagan leadership look like? How do you what makes a good pagan leader? What makes you a pagan leader in the first place? And how can you do a better job of it, right? So all that stuff's in there. There's some really great writers in there, wonderful people. The book's excellent. If you're at all interested in that, I highly recommend it. And the other one, Pagan Consent Culture, is it's very interesting because right now, of course, we're talking about the Me Too movement, and we're talking about this this unspoken culture of sexual harassment that often goes on in different communities and different groups. And of course, the pagan community is no exception. Now, some very forward-thinking people, Yvonne Abero, and I can't remember her last name, and I feel so terrible, but she's the other editor for Pagan Consent Culture. They started looking at this before the Me Too movement started. This was a couple years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And they realized that we need to have some codes of conduct, and we need to discuss what is ethical and what isn't ethical, especially in a faith where sacred sexuality is often part of our belief, and in a faith where we have broad acceptance of a wide variety of sexualities and gender spectrum, this whole spectrum, right? So how do we do this in an ethical way? What is unethical? What are positive ways to do it, right? A lot of other communities, they just go, okay, well, there's no sex at all, right? Mm-hmm. But for some people, sacred sexuality, I'm one of them, right, is an important part of the theology. So how do you handle that, right? And again, lots of brilliant essays in there. So a really good book. Okay, so sorry, I I guess I went more in depth than I intended to, but
You're
there
fine.
they are.
You're fine.
Okay, and then as I said, I was writing for a group blog at pathos.com when we last spoke. It was called Agora, and that blog still continues. But they've also got a lot more individual blogs that are being done by people, and the blog that I'm writing is called Between the Shadows, The Craft of a Liminal Witch. It's pathos.com/blogs/Between the Shadows, all one word. And you'll see that I haven't been as active on that in the past few months as I was just after we spoke. I was really very out there on it for a while, but I talk about everything from Wiccan theology, which is going towards the second pagan book that I'm working on. So that's where I'm going with that. And I talk about issues in the community. I talk about stuff that's going on. I talk about my personal practice. Sometimes I talk about my other writing, and I'm getting more active with it again now because, I don't know, just things have straightened out more in the turmoil that was going on, so now I'm more focused. So that's a good place to find me. And then as to the rest of it, I've been doing a lot of fiction writing, and I started publishing on Amazon. I'm doing a series that's called The Weird West Chronicles. It's a weird Western. It means that it's a Western with fantastical elements. Mine happen to be mysticism and sort of epic fantasy elements. You'll have and steampunk, right? So it's kind of a blend of things going on there. And the first book in the series is a novelette, and it's just called Showdown. And the reason why I started publishing it online is because I found that it was difficult to place. 8,000 words is a weird length for a story. They don't want it in a lot of magazines where the limit is 5,000, and of course you can't publish it with, as a novel. So I finally said, well, I'll do this as a serial. So over the past, last year, I was publishing one of these every 2 months. This year, I'm going to come out with a print collection of the first 6 stories. The last quote story is actually sort of a full-length novel. It's 45,000 words. So it's not just little stories, and you can read them on your Kindle, or you can wait for the print version, which should come out in mid-May. And other than that, I managed to, this is an interesting story, I connected with the current president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, and I asked her to be on a new podcast that I was starting that was featuring women in speculative fiction. I called it Spec Women Chat, which I got from a Twitter tag that another lady, Katie Waters, started. And I did my thing, and I had her on the show, and it was my first episode, and she said, hey, we could use a new manager for the SIFWA YouTube channel. Do you want to do that? And I'm like, sign me up. So now I'm doing 2 programs on there which are in that vein. One is Spec Women Chat, and the other one is called The Panel. It's a similar format, only it's for writers and professionals in science fiction and fantasy of all genders. And we are discussing matters related to the industry, the subject, the books we write, and the stories we create, and stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. I've had an opportunity to speak to some of my personal idols and people I'm a fan of, and I had Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon on the panel at the last episode. I had John Scalzi on the first episode of the panel. I've had Anne Leckie on the show. I don't know if you know who these people are, but people in science fiction and fantasy do, and it's been awesome. So That's SIFWA YouTube, SFWA YouTube, if you want to check that out. And that's totally nonprofit. I'm not. I'm doing that because it's fun, and I'm volunteering, and I want to.
Isn't YouTube great though? I
love YouTube.
Do you do it live,
it's so
or
cool.
do you record it? Do you pre-record and then
Yes.
upload? Okay,
yes,
so then, there
we
you
do
go.
it live over Google Hangouts. You bet. And then we archive it to the channel.
That's amazing.
So all mistakes included, totally candid, off the cuff.
It's so much fun. I mean, I do it on this outlet here, but for my other channel, as I mentioned, my other YouTube channel, every once in a while, I got the idea to do what I call. I mean, part of my thing is hashtag. It's the Campfire Crew. And I just tell these scary stories that I find or people send me. And
I'm going to find this now. This sounds cool.
It's just Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories on YouTube. So what I realized is I'm like, well, I do this show every Sunday night. Why don't I do a virtual campfire on my YouTube? So I go YouTube Live, and anybody who wants to can call in and tell their scary story. And we've only done it once, but it was a riot. It was just so much fun. Screw-ups, who cares? It's like everybody just sitting around a campfire and telling scary stories. It's a blast, and it's so much fun to do. And that's why when you said you were doing what you're doing, I'm like kind of jumping up and down over here going, yes, somebody else gets it too. This is so much fun.
Oh, it's just great. You get to have this, conversation about something that you're intensely interested in with other people who are just as interested in it as you are. And it doesn't matter where in the world they are. You can have this conversation, and you don't have to, you don't worry as much about how you sound or what you're going to say, or are you going to do something stupid. You just go with it. And yeah, it's pretty. I love it. I love it. I had a podcast at one time that I was doing that was sort of along this line. Well, I wasn't doing it on YouTube, of course, right? It was, audio, right? And it was called the Pagan Pathfinders podcast. And this is what gave me the idea to do this sort of thing. And so that's another thing. I'm thinking about starting that up again, the Pagan Pathfinders podcast, only I would do it this way. I would do it live on Google Hangouts on my YouTube channel. So if that's something that people want to see me do, let me know.
When you're writing, as far as the differences, and I'm scratching these notes down, a lot of different things that you're doing, and aside from the YouTube thing we're just talking about, you're talking about blogs, you're talking about writing shorter pieces, longer pieces, fiction, nonfiction. What are the challenges and the differences of each of those? And I have a follow-up about how paganism works with the motivation and the stimulation to keep on writing. But can you talk a little bit about the art of writing a kind of a different voice for so many different things?
Yeah, actually, wow, that's a great question. Okay, right, when you're writing nonfiction, right, the idea is you're trying to communicate a message. So you want to make it plain spoken. You don't want to use a lot of technical terminology, right, that people may not understand. You're trying to reach people, right, and people in general have certain common things that they understand. So you're speaking to that person, right? You need to use, I think, right, the more sensory clues that you use to communicate a particular message, the more likely it is to translate. And then there's a couple of different voices that you use, and I use anyway, and one of them is this is how it works, the teacher voice, right? And then you have the parable voice, and this is how this worked for me when I did it, right? And then you have and this is how you can try it for yourself, here's the exercise voice. Right, and if you're writing a how-to, like The Witch's 8 Paths of Power is, then you put all that together. Now, that may not all work depending on what you're doing. If I'm telling a story about what's going on in the community, right, then I'm probably using my this is how it was for me voice when I was there, or I'm using a this is what I understand is going on voice, and that's the teacher voice. Okay, so there, nonfiction, right? Fiction, you're telling a story. Because you're telling a story, you want to suspend disbelief. That's the big goal. You want to draw people into the tale. that you're telling. You want them to forget that it's a story. You want them to smell it, and you want them to feel the emotions of your characters, and you want them to grasp what's going on as if they were there and they were doing it. So that is a totally different voice. I find that I use a lot more descriptive words. I find that I try to be aware of senses when I'm teaching things, but I find that they come together more easily when I'm trying to describe, say you're on a battlefield, right? You want people to smell the acrid smoke, and you can hear the clash of weapons coming together, and somebody screaming, and you want them to really be kind of almost freaked out because they feel like they're there. So and the other thing is, truth is stranger than fiction. So you can't get away with stuff in fiction that happens in actual real life. I will point out, and I don't know politically how people feel about things, but personally, looking at things over the past couple of years, if somebody had submitted this to me as a story, I would have laughed at them. I would have told them there is no way this is ever going to happen, right? This is ridiculous and it's unrealistic. And here we are. We're living it, right? So you've got to keep that in mind, and it's a trick, I think.
Which do you enjoy most, if you can say that? Because I know you're probably going to say, I love doing everything, but is there one really that you like doing more than the other?
Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
If you put me away in a cell and you gave me a piece of charcoal and a piece of paper and you said you get this one once per day, I would probably write fiction on it as opposed to nonfiction. I really do enjoy the nonfiction, but it's more, when I'm writing about nonfiction, it's not the act of writing about it that gives me the thrill. It's sharing the experience that I've had and the joy that I've taken in something with someone else in a way that I think they can understand. And nothing makes me happier when I'm doing that. When you're talking to someone and you say, and this is how it worked for me, and this is what I did, and then this happened, and that's how it works, right? And then someone goes, oh, and the light dawns in their eyes, and they've just made a connection, and it's important to them, and that's what I'm after when I'm writing nonfiction. I want to see that. I want figuratively to know that people are doing that, making that eureka moment, understanding, grasping, and then taking whatever it is that they got from what I'm doing and then doing their own thing with that, because I'm sharing my joy.
Lady
but yeah,
Sable
if I had one piece of paper, fiction.
There you go, fiction. Sorry I interrupted you there. Lady Sable Aradia, my guest here on The Edge of the Unknown, sablearadia.com. And I hope I have this right, too, for the blog. Pathos.com/blogs/ Between the Shadows. So a couple of places you can get a little bit more information about her and her work and what we're talking about here on The Edge of the Unknown. 716-218-3557 is the phone number to get on board. I have not looked at the email bag until 9 o'clock here, and there are a couple, so let's get to at least one of them. Let's go to... okay, let's go to this one. Hello. A friend of mine who is no longer with us often asked me to try out Wicca with her, but I never did. I frequently have dreams of her, and in them she continues to encourage me to check things out. I was always afraid of initiations, though. Perhaps a carryover from my sorority days when initiation was more like hazing. What's the process like, if it even is necessary? Is it necessary? Thanks for taking my question. That's from Amberlynn, listening in South Dakota. I wonder if she knows both Dakotas Dave. That's a joke no one's going to get. Anyway, there's a good question from Amber. Thanks for being on the edge, Amberlynn.
Yeah, hi, Amber. Okay, other people will disagree with me, but it's always been my opinion that no, initiation is not necessary. If you practice Wicca, you're a witch. That's it. And you can get it from books, and you can do it with people that you like, and you don't ever have to do initiations. This is controversial. a lot of tradition witches don't agree with me on that one. They think that only a witch can make a witch. But the reason why I hold the opinion that I do is because, first of all, I did a lot of stuff on my own before I initiated into any tradition. And by the time I initiated into the tradition that I'm in, I had learned a lot of the things that people typically learn at different levels of initiation. So I actually went through my formal initiations pretty quickly, right? So if I learned those things already, obviously I didn't need the initiation to learn them. The other argument that I have is that Gerald Gardner, who, of course, is acknowledged generally as the founder of modern Wicca. Whether or not it existed before that is a debate, and I'm not getting into that. But he wrote in his book, Witchcraft Today, which kind of started the whole thing, that he believed that what was going on with these covens was that priests and priestesses of the pagan traditions were training. So obviously, I assume that means that there should be lay pagans too. Not everybody's called to be a priest, and that's fine. There are lots of other ways to do great things in the world, and you could be a completely devoted person to your faith and never take a vow in a way that makes you part of the priesthood. So that's my answer to that question. As to what is the process, it varies with different traditions. I advise you to go, let's see if I can remember www.sacred-texts, as in textbooks.com. They have a whole section on Wicca and paganism, and in that section you will find Gerald Gardner's Book of Shadows. And in that, he describes what was for them the typical initiation ceremonies. Now, not all traditions do it that way, but the really, the hardcore ones will, right? There are symbolic challenges, and in the second degree, there is also the use of a flogger, which is not intended to hurt. It is intended to sting, not to cause pain, right? So there is that, but that's not every tradition, right? Most traditions now, I think, don't use the flogger anymore. And most traditions, when you get to the third degree, which in traditional Wicca is something we call a great rite, which is an act of sacred sexuality where a priest and priestess traditionally, although I would argue that's not, the gender thing isn't necessary. That's also controversial, but they perform an act of sacred sexuality representing the god and goddess to symbolize that they have joined with the god and goddess in a spiritual union, right? So, but again, that's the really hardcore people will do that, and most traditions nowadays will use what they call a great rite in token, which is a symbolic act that involves the use of a cup and an anathema. So an anathema, sacred dagger, for those who don't know, right? So, and that's, the obvious symbolic act is dipping the anathema into the cup, right? So it really depends on the tradition and what you're comfortable with. There are traditions of Wicca that are entirely feminist-based. They have, and therefore their initiation rites are totally different and have nothing to do with anything like that. I'm sure you can find a place where you'll be comfortable and where paganism can work for you if that's something you're interested in.
Awesome. Amber Lynn, thanks for writing in. That's a very cool question. We are up against another break, but I do want to ask this before it runs out of my mind, because I did mention it when we were talking about what you liked about writing and the different kinds. How does your practice take a part in what you do on a day-to-day basis, writing and everything else that you do?
That's a pretty broad question. Are you sure you want to ask me that before a break?
Why don't you think about it? We'll take the break, and when we come back, we'll revisit that, and that's how we'll kick off the last segment of the show.
Okay, you got it.
All right, sounds perfect. Lady Sable Aradia, not only a terrific writer and a great guest, but terribly accommodating. So she's going to hang out and think about the answer to that question, and we would love to hear from you. We've still got time, folks. 716-218-3557, and of course, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. Couple more questions in the email bag, but we have time for you. Back right after this. My name is Mark. You're listening to the best in paranormal talk anywhere. It's the Edge of the Unknown, and we're back right after this.
Looking for the best Japanese and Thai cuisine in Western New York? Then you have to visit Teton Kitchen at 415 Dick Road in Depew. From appetizers and soups, simple, special, big, and fusion-style maki, to sushi, sashimi, and tempura, you won't get a range of items like this anywhere. Hungry for more? Teton Kitchen offers a full dinner menu and kushiyaki dishes, as well as a huge variety of sake, wine, beer, both domestic and Asian imports. Owner Taka and his bride Kin are proud to boast that Teton Kitchen is Yelp's #1 rated restaurant in Western New York, and they welcome you for lunch or dinner 7 days a week with takeout and online ordering available. Visit TetonKitchen.com for their full menu, hours, and online ordering, or call 716-393-3720. Teton Kitchen, 415 Dick Road in Depew.
Itadakimasu. No word in the English language is less convincing than probably.
Are you sure we should get matching tattoos on our first date?
Sure. We'll probably stay together.
Probably? It's been 23 minutes since I ate. I can probably swim.
You should wait 30 minutes.
Okay, now tell me what to do. Cannonball! Cramp! Oh, I have a cramp.
I can probably hit the green from here.
Probably.
Can I get a mulligan?
Ready to go?
Hey, are you sure you're okay to drive?
Yeah, I'm pretty sober. Yeah, I'm probably okay. Probably okay isn't okay, especially when it comes to drinking and driving. If you're drinking, call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hello. What are your fears? Are you badgered by domestic affairs, haunted by ghosts or demons, terrorized by those who would use magic as a weapon, or tormented from within? I can end it. I can stop it. I can cast them away, for I am a sorcerer, and protecting people from these things is what I do. Seek my services at sorcererforhire.com or call now for faster service 206-501-0444, because time is not on your side.
The Hope Project of Western New York is a resource for struggling families often identified as the working poor. We assist individuals who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own, disabled individuals, households with special needs members, victims of domestic violence in transition, and our military families and veterans. The Hope Project provides our members with gently used clothing, household supplies and toys, as well as hygiene and cleaning supplies. We also make available specialty items like prom dresses and Halloween costumes. These items are provided at zero cost to our members. How can you help? By donating items at our storefront, 4545 Transit Road in Williamsville, New York, inside the Eastern Hills Mall. Store hours, Monday 10 to 2, Tuesday 11 to 2, Wednesday 10 to 8, Thursday 10 to 2, and Saturday 10 to 2. Closed on all school holidays. Clothing should be contemporary, free of stains and tears, and household items must be in good condition and in working order. We also accept grocery and department store gift cards, as well as monetary donations. You can also help out by becoming a volunteer. For more information, visit our website at thehopeprojectofwny.org or call us at 716-810-9156. The Hope Project of Western New York. Dignified help for those in need.
Hi, this is Thomas Fusco, author of The Theory of Supergeometry, and you are listening to The Edge of the Unknown.
Good old Thomas Fusco. Awesome guest. Do I ever have a bad guest? I don't think I've ever had a bad guest. Maybe, well, yeah, we already talked about that. We're not going to go back down that road. One bad guest out of 7 or 8 years of doing the show, I think we're okay. But we're having a good time with a great guest tonight. Lady Sable Aradia, SableAradia.com has been my guest. We have touched on a number of things about all of the things she's involved with. We talked about Wicca. We've talked about the writing that she does. We're going to talk about what is going on with her right this second. And we're going to get to a question about how her practice as a Wiccan involved, what that involves in her day-to-day life. But before that, I have to mention, we haven't talked about your music at all, so we're going to have to do that on a different show.
Oh. Yeah, fair
or we
enough.
can fit it in here. But we can also take questions from you, the listening audience. We've got a couple in the email bag, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com, and one more segment to go. If you'd like to give us a ring, you still have time to do that, 716-218-3557. But before we get to the question we left off with in the last segment, let's talk about what's going on right now. What's the scoop? What are you doing?
Well, I've got a release coming up on the 1st of May. I'm going to be part of a book bundle that's available on Amazon. It's 22 authors with stories about they take place in worlds of low or no tech. It's called On the Horizon, Simple Worlds of Speculative Adventure. And my novel in it is going to be called Homefront. It's related to an ongoing work in progress that people who've been following me for a while will be familiar with. It's something I call the Toy Soldier Saga, which is fantasy space opera. So basically picture sailing ships in space. That's what's going on, right? So, and yeah, like I said, that'll come out on May 1st, and it's available right now at a 99-cent pre-order price that will not be repeated, and it's only available for 3 months, guys. So, but you get to keep it. We've disabled the thing that lets Amazon delete it when it's no longer available on Amazon, so you can get it at Amazon, Kobo, whatever.
Awesome. I do have to ask this. How long does it take you to write a novel? I know we're talking NaNoWriMo, where you're cutting it down into a matter of 30 or so days. But when you're given the time, how long is it taking you to pump out 45,000 words?
Okay, I can do, let's see here. I typically do somewhere around 1,200 words a day, I'd say on average. So 50,000 words when I don't have something pressing these days like NaNoWriMo will take me 6 weeks to 8 weeks, right? And that doesn't include all the other things I do on the side. I probably typically write about 50,000 words a month when you consider the blogging and everything else that I do. So, and before you say, oh, that's crazy, I know people who write way faster than I do. I'm actually kind of average as far as independent writers go. And Stephen King does 2,000 words a day before he does anything else in the day. So.
And then the editing kicks in. Oh, no, not the editing. for me.
Nobody likes editing.
It's funny. I had a byline article published in a newspaper today, and even when I look back at it, and it's not even that long, it's about what you average on a day, maybe a little bit longer, I still reread it and go, oh, I could have said that different. Oh, man, what did I say? That whole sentence sucks. Where did that come from? I'm just like, don't even look at it.
It's never going to be perfect.
That's
it
right.
never will.
So we left the last segment with my question about how your practice and how your just being a Wiccan falls into what you do on a day-to-day basis, including your writing and everything else that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. How does it all work together?
Okay, I guess I should have asked you more like in what aspect, right? If you're talking about perspective, how does it inform? Like, it's always part of my perspective, right? I acknowledge the natural cycles. There's an old tradition of kissing your hand to the moon twice. I do that every time I see the moon. I don't know. It's just my own way of taking the time to note to myself, oh, it's the moon and it's pretty and it's at this stage of its phases and whatnot. I get together with people 8 times a year to acknowledge the Sabbats, and I was meeting regularly every full moon with my coven. I haven't been doing that lately, and something I've been meaning to get back to. Maybe this is a good way to kind of kick me in the butt and make me do that because, I don't know, just life happens, right? And you get distracted. And I'm, as you can see, a busy person, so I sometimes put too much on my plate and things fall on the wayside. But I spend time in nature when I can. I think I get more out of that on a spiritual level than just about anything else. And I don't know, how does it affect my routine? Well, okay, it affects my perspective. It affects how I look at the world. It affects the things that I care about. The issues that I consider to be important, I think, are naturally part of my spirituality. Like, by tradition, Aradia, she is, according to a book that was one of the founding books of modern Wicca, which is called Aradia Gospel of the Witches, right? She was sent to Earth by her mother Diana to teach witchcraft to the masses and liberate the oppressed. So liberating the oppressed is a big part of my personal spirituality. It's one of the reasons why I took the name Sable Aradia upon my 3rd degree initiation. It was my acknowledgement that, okay, this is the mission I've been given. This is part of what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it, right? And so I tend to care very passionately about things where I see people being oppressed. So this, I get into political arguments on Twitter. I probably shouldn't, but I do. And on, right? I think that my experience of, I guess, it informs the spirituality of the characters that I write. It informs the way when I'm writing about fantasy magic, for example, that I relate to the mechanics of what's going on there when they're doing whatever it is they do. And that varies. Like, it's not the same in every series. Different worlds will have different rules about magic, and they'll be internally consistent, I hope. Right? And when I'm writing science fiction, it tends to affect the way I look at my relationship with what's going on in terms of the technology. How does the technology relate to the world? Is it a benefit? Is it harming? Can it be used in different ways? What are the natural consequences of using it in this way? Can we explore that, right? So I wrote a dystopian cli-fi novel, climate fiction, that's out there. Well, okay, that's a novelette too, actually, not a novel. It's out there. It's called, it's horror. I don't know how I feel about it. It's called Food on Their Table. And that's one of the ways in which I looked at, okay, this is what we're doing to the environment. Obviously, witches care very much about the natural world. I care about what we're doing. I see the effects of climate change. We were talking about the weather. Late spring is becoming common. When I was a kid, the daffodils were up by the 1st of March. Now the daffodils have to wait till the middle of April. They just came up. They're just blooming now. It's clear there's something wrong here. Some people refuse to see it. I find them extremely frustrating. And even the ones who do see it are unwilling to do anything about it because of the almighty goddamn dollar, and it makes me angry, and I want to change it. So I write about that. I write about how this is going to look in 100 years if we keep doing this. I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it does. I tend to ask that question with folks who are on talking about practices or belief, and in all spiritual matters. I've even asked some of the folks on to talk about their experience with martial arts. How does that play out in your day? Is it something that you wake up and that's the first thing you have to do? Is it something that you take time out of your day to do? So I thought it would be appropriate to ask you, something that is a little bit off the beaten path of what most people would do in their day, to know, hey, this is how I incorporate. That's all.
Ah, I see. So you're more interested in stuff like the kissing my hand to the moon and when I meet and stuff like that.
No, all of it.
I have household altars.
Okay.
We call them altars. They're actually shrines. That would be the proper technical term for them, but in paganism we call them altars, right? Where I change it with the seasons, for example, which symbols of the god and goddess are on it and what colors are displayed and which of the little figurines are forwarded back. And it's also where I keep my magical tools, and that's up all the time. That's in my living room. It's in a beautiful cabinet that my mother-in-law gave to me. And I have a statue of Ganesh over here sitting beside me because Ganesh is awesome because he's the guy who's all about living life and surviving adversity. So, yeah, little things like that. My house is decorated a bit different. That's one thing, right? And I go outside a lot to communicate with nature.
Interesting that you bring that up, because the two questions we have left in email, and anybody else can get on as we take you up until 10, theedgeoftheunknown@gmail.com. You are not out of time yet. Both kind of involve nature. So I'm going to grab June. And June's question first. June says, hello. Mark had a guest on a few weeks ago. He was a former minister who was also very accepting of outside influences that he said often made him a target for the really religious people he knew. Before I go any further, I had a gentleman on named Jim Willis, who is a former pastor, who has really opened up his spirituality and also brought in a lot of science to the way that he approaches his spirituality. So that's what this is in reference to. Let's see. Okay. My question to Sable is, can a Christian work pieces of Wicca into their life without converting to Wicca, or does a person even need to convert to receive the joy of what it offers? I'm thinking that your guest from before would agree with the latter. What do you think? Let's ask Sable first. Thanks, June, for being on the edge. Wow.
Yes. Thanks, June. That's a very good question. Okay, there again is another something that is controversial in my community. Some people would say no. I don't agree with them at all. I don't think it matters what name you call the divine. You can anything we do to communicate with the divine is only a partial understanding anyway. I tell people the Aesop's fable about the blind men and the elephant, right? God is an elephant, right? And maybe I've got the trunk, and I think that an elephant looks like a snake. And one guy's got the ear, and to him the elephant looks like a fan, and another guy's touching the side, and the elephant looks like a wall. We're just trying to understand the divine in a framework that makes sense to the human mind. So if you find the framework that works for you, can you borrow Wiccan elements in your Christianity? Absolutely. I want to recommend a book to you. It's called The Path of a Christian Witch. It's by a lady named Adelina St. Clair. It's in front of me right now, actually. She writes about her path as a Christian Wiccan. And she's beautiful woman. I met her at the Canadian National Pagan Conference back in, I think, 2010, and she, she knows what she's talking about. She's found something that works for her. I think it could work for you. I don't see why it can't work for anybody. I get along just fine with other people who are in the branch of let's live and let live, and how I relate to the divine is going to be completely different from how even another witch in my coven relates to the divine. It's very personal, so there's no reason you can't do it any way you want.
Interesting. I think that was her reference was to Jim Willis's. He moved away from a lot of society. He built a house out in the middle of nowhere, and a lot of what he was talking about outside of the scientific approach to explanation of fantastical things, but was also talking about being one with nature and how his spirituality kind of changed and morphed into something that was even greater than when he was in the pulpit. Very interesting guest. That was on a few weeks ago. If anybody
I'll have
out
to
there,
go listen to that. I think I'd like him.
Yeah, excellent guest. He was on, and again, his name is Jim Willis. The book that we were talking about specifically was Supernatural Gods. But anybody out there, go to the archives at the edgeoftheunknown.com page. Click on the button that says Archives, and the button right there will send you to all of the shows starting from this past fall. Let's see. We've got time for this other question here for Lady Sable Aradia. SableAradia.com if you're playing at home. This one comes from Andy in Astoria. He writes in and says, do you need to be out in nature to practice? Do you have any advice for people who would like to practice but have limited access to nature? I live in New York City, and it's hard for me to get around. Even getting out of my building is tough. Any suggestions? Andy in Astoria, thanks for being on the edge.
Andy, thank you very much for bringing up a really good topic. Accessibility is very important to me. I mentioned how my husband was in a major car accident a few years ago. He is now a highly functional quadriplegic. He has limited mobility. He can only walk for a certain length of time. His hands don't work nearly as well as they used to. Accessibility is a big deal. So yeah, he doesn't really want to go hiking out into the middle of a mountainside. It's just not possible for him, right? I think nature's everywhere, right? If you cannot get outside, you can have a potted plant, and if you can't do that in your building, it doesn't matter because there are ways to communicate with the divine indoors. It's something that has been addressed in the community. It was a big issue a few years ago. A lot of our practitioners now are getting older. We've been around for a while. We've been around for more than 50 years. So, older people lose mobility. They're not going to go hiking up a mountainside either, right? So they go to their backyard, they go to the local park, or they gather when it's raining indoors and they cast a circle and they, communicate through symbolism, and that is just fine too.
And that kind of comes full circle with the way we started out the show about believing, and that's where the power really is in all the things that you've been talking about throughout the evening. That's what it starts with, regardless of where you are. I think anybody would say the same thing. A challenge or even just daily practices of what you do for work or how you raise your family, the belief structure is super important, not necessarily where you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Sable Aradia, my guest here on The Edge of the Unknown. Look for her latest book that will be coming out in May, and it's only available for how long? 3 months, did you say?
3 months, 90 days. It's limited time availability. Yep.
And will it be offered anywhere else or just on Amazon?
Oh no, it's on any e-platform. It's available on Barnes & Noble. It's available on Kobo. Anywhere you find ebooks.
So when we talk about publishing and all the things that you've done, have you ever considered just doing the self-publishing route? Because a lot of folks that I have had on, and actually multiple guests, have written books, but they've kind of gone their own way instead of going through a publishing house and all that sort of thing. Do you have experience with that side of publishing?
I do. I'm what they call a hybrid writer, which means that I am both independent and traditionally published. Right? My first book was published by Red Wheel Weiser, And I've done everything in between, right? My Weird West Chronicles, which I spoke of earlier, are entirely self-published. That's all under Diane Morrison on Amazon. You can find links on my website if you. But yeah, right? Yeah, and I've done everything in between. I've done collectives. That's what On the Horizon is, which is coming out on the 1st of May, right? And I've done small presses. That's what the anthologies that I contributed to were. So, yeah, and there's good reasons to do them all. I think that traditional publishing. Okay, let me see if I can. I know we're running out of time, so
take your time. We can go over.
Let me see if I can sum up.
Sure.
Right. Pros and cons of traditional and self-publishing. Self-publishing, you have a lot more freedom. You can publish in any length that you like, which is not true in traditional publishing. There are very specific lengths that publishers are looking for, right? You have complete control over your cover art and your marketing, right? And you can do whatever you want. Cons. Getting attention is hard. You have to do all the damn marketing. I hate marketing. I hate it. I hate it. But it has to be done, because if you don't talk about your book, who else is going to, right? And it has a reputation that isn't as good of quality as traditionally published work. I don't think that reputation's deserved. And maybe it was, but the industry is changing. If you're going to self-publish, do yourself a favor and hire an editor. Nothing is going to deter people from reading your work more than if it's full of grammar and spelling mistakes, and if you're repetitious and you lose you have a big plot hole, So, okay, right? Traditional publishing, you don't control the cover art. You have to make edits according to what your editor wants you to do, because they're the ones who are funding it. So if they're going to risk their money on it, they want a product that they think is going to sell, not necessarily a work of art as you think of your book as. However, they're usually pretty favorable towards trying to make your vision come to play, because they wouldn't have accepted your book for publication in the first place if they didn't see something magical in it, right? The advantages are they do all the marketing, right? I would never have connected with you were it not for my publisher getting a hold of you, Mark. I would not have known to talk to you, right? So they did that for me, right? They back it financially, so you don't have to cover the cost of printing, right? They have widespread ways of getting attention that you don't as an independent writer, and they also have their own in-house editors, so you don't have to hire one of them. And so there are good reasons to do them both, and I guess it really depends on what you're doing, right? You make about the same amount of money in general, I think. People will tell you, oh, well, you make more on indie publishing than you do traditional publishing. No, because you don't have as widespread a network. The other thing that traditional publishers have is distributors that they work with. You have to find distributors. Lots of them won't even talk to independent writers. So you're kind of limited as to how the path to get it out in the store, right? Traditional publishers can do all that. Yeah, you're only getting a small percentage of each retail sale, but because they sell so many more, it works out.
Yeah, and honestly, what you just said, when you're doing everything on your own, all of the marketing, all of the footwork, you're making phone calls, your emails. I mean, time is money, and that comes here. The almighty dollar just came back in, and you have to decide, hey, is 20 hours extra work to publish this book on my own worth it, or is it putting it in the hands of somebody else and seeing how that ride goes? That's a big decision to make, but I can see the merits of both sides. That's for sure.
There are good reasons to do either one. It really just depends on what you're doing. Yeah, absolutely.
So after this next piece comes out in the month of May, and folks can go out and check that out, you mentioned the on-demand classes at your website. What else do you have in store for us in 2018 as we are getting into the spring and shortly moving into the summer?
Oh, geez. Well, yeah. I'm putting out a print edition of the Weird West Chronicles. That will be coming out sometime in the middle of May, I hope. But you see, there's one of the problems, right? I'm doing the cover art myself, and I'm painting it because I couldn't find any stock photos I was happy with to alter. So I have to have time to get the painting done. Anyway, but it's coming out soon, right? I'm working on a new album this year. You mentioned that I am also a musician, and my musical partner and I are working on something which is going to connect to the Weird West Chronicles. So it's folk music for those who are into that, and that'll be sometime, I hope, in the fall. I've got a manuscript that's under consideration right now, and I don't know if or when that will come out yet, but it is in serious consideration. And you'll probably see me pop up in magazines from time to time in science fiction and fantasy, because sooner or later they're going to get tired of me sending them stuff and they're going to put it out there. Anyway.
Hey, it's called persistence, right? I'm not going away. I'm going to keep calling and sending until I get what I want.
That's right. Hey, they say that the difference between a successful writer and one who isn't is persistence.
That is a great way to end the show. Thanks again for doing this. Lady Sable Aradia, my guest, SableAradia.com. Can we do this again in the future and not wait 3 years to do it?
I would love to anytime. You just let me know, Mark. I had such a great time. Thank you.
Awesome. Hang on the line, and I will catch up with you, but I'm going to wrap this baby up. Again, ladies and gentlemen, Lady Sable Aradia. SableAradia.com is the website. Also, her blog, pathos.com/blogs/Between the Shadows, ways that you can find her work. And again, we had a blast here. Hopefully, wherever you are listening, you had a good time too. That's going to wrap it up for tonight. Thanks again to my guest. We're back next week talking philosophy and divergent approaches to the paranormal. Dr. John Shook is going to join me for another awesome conversation about the paranormal. I hope you will join me too. Thanks to Mark 9 for providing musical interludes tonight. And get out there and support your local musicians, shops, and bookstores, everybody. It's extremely important that you do that. So until next time, everybody, be excellent to each other. And again, always be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door. We'll see you next time here on The Edge of the Unknown. Everybody, have a great week. Take care.